Hey guys, I'm Mackenzie King from A Cup of Life. I make videos about my faith in hopes that they will encourage you guys in your own faith journey. If this is your first time to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. Don't forget to click that subscribe button below this video so that you won't miss any more videos from me. So this is the third video in my series called God's Perfect Timing. If you haven't watched the first and second videos yet, go ahead and follow the links right here, and I'm going to leave them down below as well. Just go ahead and watch those first, just because this is kind of following chronologically just what's happened in the last 4 years of my life. But in this video, I'm going to be sharing the story of how I changed my major in college. Just like Paul in Acts 16, it was as if God had put a brick wall in front of my path. I couldn't see around it, I had no idea what was on the other side, and frankly, I just didn't really know what to do with it. Have you ever experienced this, where that brick wall is placed in front of you, or maybe a better analogy for you is a door is just slammed in your face? This can happen for one of two reasons. Either you're making your own plans without God, or you're following God's plan, but he decides to change your direction in the middle of that. So I go to IWU it ended up being 4.5 years, but at that time I thought it was going to be 4. I was a nursing major. I took anatomy and physiology and a lab and microbiology in that lab. So those were kind of my 2 intro to nursing classes, and those classes definitely help weed out those that decide nursing isn't for them, which at that time didn't think I fit in that category. I was totally set on being a nurse. As I mentioned before, I am really big into music, like choir and band and everything, and I did that all the way throughout schooling. But when I got to college and decided to be a nursing major, I just said, you know, I'm gonna put music just on the back burner for this semester. I wanted to be able to adjust to college life, and especially with nursing, it is a lot of studying. So I just kind of decided to put it aside, and I said I would come back to it. I didn't realize how detrimental the decision not to do music would be in my life. And it was at about halfway through the semester that God started placing like a few bricks in my path as he's building this brick wall. So that first brick, or this first several bricks that were placed in my path, I had to take this test. It was kind of like a standardized test for nursing majors, and you had to pass it with a certain score in order to continue in the nursing program. And if you didn't pass it, you could retake it, but you had to like wait a couple months, and so it was just gonna throw things off a lot. So I studied a bunch for this, and like I'll just let you guys know, like I loved labs because I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I liked all the hands-on stuff. But classroom was so hard, and I'm not like a super brainiac student. I never had like straight A's, but I didn't ever really think about the fact of like, am I actually going to be able to do this? Am I actually going to be able to understand all this material? And after studying a ton, I went to take this test early one Saturday morning, and I failed it by 1 point. So that was really frustrating. I was the only person in the room to fail that test that I know of. And I was just really upset about it. I went back to my room and just cried because I felt like a failure, and just realizing, you know, this is the end of the semester. This is gonna put me a semester behind because I'm gonna have to retake this test. And I'm beginning to realize how drained I'm feeling. And so I'm thinking through, you know, well, why am I feeling so drained? You know, what's different in my life right now? And I realized I'm not in music. And it was kind of like building that connection of, oh my gosh, like music is how I relieve my stress. It's how I express myself. Like I took one of the biggest parts of my life and I set it aside and said that it didn't matter anymore. Thinking back, I can't even believe that I did that because I love music so much, and I can't ever imagine it not in my life ever again. And then the rest of the wall kind of came a couple weeks later after I had taken that test. I took just a normal test in one of my classes. It was anatomy and physiology, and the professor is handing the test back, and I remember the girl in front of me turned around and she goes, "Oh, I bet that you did so good because you're just so smart." And I know that she didn't mean it in like a mean way, but to me, I'm thinking, this girl has no idea that I didn't pass that one standardized test and that I'm struggling and just to try and keep my head above water in this class. And I get that test back and I did poorly on that one as well. And for like several days after that, I just like stopped doing homework. It was really bad. I had no motivation. I didn't want to be in nursing anymore. I was just like, I felt so drained. And I remember I spent several nights on IWU's website looking at the other majors that are offered at the school. I couldn't find really anything that felt like a good fit for me. And I specifically stayed away from music majors because even though I love music and everybody told me, you know, my entire life that I should be a music major, I never really wanted to major in it just because it is my like way that I release stress, and I didn't want it to ever be what caused me stress. Which is kind of silly, but it made sense in my mind then. So guys, for my entire life, people told me that I should major in music, but my response was always like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I want to make my own plans. No, I want to choose my own path. No, I don't want people to choose my major for me. And I was so just resistant to it and stubborn because I wanted to be in control. When I'm like looking back now, like God was speaking to me my entire life. He told me the major that I should study in college like years before I even made it to high school, let alone college. The whole time I'm making my own plans and completely ignoring what God had planned for me. I just had to throw that little part in there because it's so important. Like, guys, like we can't ignore what God has for us and when He's trying to speak to us. Like, if He's speaking, you need to listen and you need to accept it and like go down that path because it's so much better than any plans that we could ever have. So, okay, I'll get off my soapbox there. Back to the story. And so like the next morning I wake up and it was a chapel day. We have chapel 3 times a week at school. I was running really, really late. I wasn't even gonna go. I was just gonna skip it for the day. And there's just something within me that was like, no, Mackenzie, you need to go to this chapel. So I quickly like change and try to make myself look somewhat presentable and run over there. And I mean, like chapel had already started and I sat at the very, very back of this auditorium, like under the balcony on like the back wall. It's a pretty big building, so like everything on stage just looks like a speck at that point. And as I was walking in, a music professor and several music students were walking out on stage, and they told us about a trip that they were taking to Zambia. They're gonna go and teach music to Zambians. And I was thinking, oh, that kind of sounds cool. I think I might want to do that. And at that point, I was not thinking about switching my major. I was just like, oh, music. Yeah, I love music. I'll go do that. And so I met with that music professor the next day, I think, or like it was a couple days later. And just through, oh man, I'm gonna get emotional again. Guys, this story is, I'm sorry, I keep crying, but it is really emotional because it was such a turning point in my life that I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, what if I wouldn't have made the decision to change my major, because my entire life would have been so different. Just all these people that I met and that played a role in my life the last 4.5 years. It's hard to imagine a different path. But so I go to meet with this professor and I just kind of told him where I was at in my life, what I was thinking, why I wanted to go on the trip. And he was like, yeah, cool, you're gonna go. But then our conversation kind of started turning towards wind ensemble because he directs the wind ensemble. And he was like, do you play any instruments? I was like, yeah, I play French horn. I haven't been playing super long, but you know, I'm pretty decent. And so he's like, hey, you know what? Our 4th chair French horn player just had to go home and she's not planning to come back. So if you want to join wind ensemble, I think that you should for next semester. I joined wind ensemble and he encouraged me to talk with another music professor just to kind of decide what the next plan of action was for me. So following Paul in Acts 16, where he has the vision and God tells him through the vision that he needs to go to Macedonia. My kind of like vision moment, although I didn't have a vision of this, but it was right here in that meeting. And I just like, this thing was stirring inside of me that was like, oh, maybe what everybody's been telling me my whole life is true, and that really was God speaking to me the whole time. And it just amazes me looking back at that, because I never once thought that was God trying to speak to me all those years ago, you know? But it's just really cool how it all works out. So I was like, okay, God, like, I'm gonna look at the music majors, but I don't really want to do this. And just through searching and reading through like the descriptions of the classes that are offered and everything, I was like, oh no, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I ended up meeting with that other professor probably like the next day. This was all happening in, you know, just a couple days here. And so I go and meet with her and kind of tell her, you know, I am kind of thinking of changing my major. We ended up talking a lot about music education. By the end of that conversation, we sat there and talked for like over an hour. I was like, all right, I'm doing this. And I literally went straight to the registrar's office and signed the papers to change my major. So after like a whirlwind of a couple weeks of, you know, I failed the 2 tests and finding out about Zambia and then meeting with both of these professors, I had all of a sudden changed my major. It was like, I did not see this coming at all. It was like this brick wall was there and everything was just really blind. But I was like, okay, God, like, I'm trying to step out here. What's happening? And just through those events, God just kind of like knocked the wall down, and all of a sudden there was this new path that had been created and built for me to walk down. And then the excitement came to an end because I finally realized I'm only halfway through the semester. So although I knew what was coming next, I still had to finish out the nursing path for the rest of that semester. That was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever done, because I had absolutely no motivation to be in those classes, to study outside of those classes. I was just like, God, I am so ready to just have music around my entire life. I want it all back right now. But there was that waiting period for that change to occur. So that was really difficult. But as I was trying to get through the rest of that semester, it was as if like that brick wall was still there and I was walking into it, but like you can't go anywhere because the brick wall stops you. So it was just really discouraging and frustrating, and it was just hard, you know? And I can't help but think back to Paul and Silas when they were thrown in prison. So just to kind of recap Paul and Silas's story, they had been praying over this woman, and they ended up getting thrown in prison because of it. And this all happened because God told them to go to Macedonia. He had put brick walls in front of them and kept them from preaching in 2 other areas in order to get them to Macedonia. So here they are in prison. They had just been beaten, just like a lot of bad things had happened to them. And I can't help but think how they were feeling during that time, because I bet they were probably feeling the same way that I was feeling. That discouragement, frustration, like, God, where are you? Why do I have to go through this? Why can't I just skip to what comes next? But then as Paul and Silas are in prison and they're worshiping to God and just ministering to the other prisoners and the guards, God sent an earthquake that set them free. It was in that moment that I think, you know, if I'm using this metaphor here, it was in that moment when God sent the earthquake that the brick wall crumbled for Paul and Silas, and that season of waiting had ended for them. So one of the questions that I was asked several times, actually, like after I had changed my major, so just within like that year that followed, do you regret changing your major? And I do not regret it one bit. Even though right now I'm not using my degree, which I'm going to talk about in another video here, but had I have not changed my major, I wouldn't have met so many incredible friends that are going to be lifelong friends. Just the experiences that I got to have. I traveled around so much with the wind ensemble and the chorale. I got to sing and play in some just amazing places like Carnegie Hall. I got to do a concert with Michael W. Smith. just all the amazing people that I got to minister to. It's because of playing French horn that I got to play on the worship team at my church, at school, and I honestly can't imagine my life any other way. That was just, it was the right path for me. It took some time to get there. I had to go through change to get there. But God blessed me so much through my obedience in changing my major. So I just want to encourage you guys today that if God ever puts a brick wall in front of your path, just say, God, I don't know what's behind this wall, but I'm choosing to trust you. And then go and be amazed at what God does through your obedience. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope that this was encouraging to you, and make sure that you share this with someone else who needs to hear it today.